And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I welcome the monthly snapshot of information we get on these performance indicators. They do give an extremely useful flavour of what's going on across the directorates. In my own area, I welcome the encouraging signs that about the turnaround of planning applications. And colleagues will, of course, also note and welcome the input that we've recently had of the Planning Advisory Service, who have come in and made an external review of the planning service in Northamptonshire. So all of this is to be welcomed, and the encouraging signs need to be followed up, and any areas which are less encouraging will obviously need to be addressed as well. So it's some very useful indicators, and just in general terms, I welcome the change of format because I think it makes it rather more digestible than the way we've been doing it previously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brackenbury, just looking around the room for any other comments? No. Oh, Councillor Lorman.
You covered a couple of things in my area, but I just wanted to point out the decline in the number of defects outstanding on the network, the road network, as we continue to look at those and respond to those problems. I think that's excellent work by our partners as well.
Excellent, thank you for that, Councillor Lorman. Okay, so the report's been moved by myself. Can I look for someone to second that report? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 36 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 6, which is the Household Support Fund, HSF3. I'd like to invite Councillor Maxwell to the floor, please. Councillor Maxwell, you have up to a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good morning. Household Support Fund. I welcome this report because it sets out how the most needed families, pensioners, unpaid carers and disabled people. This £2.5 million payment by the government has been awarded to NNC. This fund will clearly help these people during the winter months. Question: how many people will receive this help? What type of support will you give, for example, white goods, heating, food, etc.? And how many people will get the white goods? How will you get this message across to people who do not seek help, i.e. pensioners, who would not ask for help? Also, some carers may not be aware that this is available for them or reluctantly ask for it. How do you prevent fraud? Once you give it out, there's no way of getting it back. These people are very clever in doing this, and officers must be aware of it. Once you give this money, it's hard to get back fraudulent claims. Lastly, what happens if they do not have a bank account? In summing up, this is a great report, and it will help the people who most need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Buckingham, if you'd like to come to the floor. Well, you've got a mic there. You've got a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. And like my colleague, welcome this report. However, I would like to give you a little snapshot, is that some of the people that we're trying to help are some of the most vulnerable, not always the greatest manager of money. Looking at, and a lot of people now are getting in debt because of the crisis. So any money given would be taken up in trying to pay for that debt. There's not a lot of help and support within our communities. CAB are overstretched at the moment. So my plea for this week for this, and as I say, I welcome the report, I welcome the money. I would like you to put some money into getting those support services, getting the debt advice, getting the... Otherwise, we're going to get into a spiral of loan sharks as people try to scrabble for money. So that's my plea for this week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buckingham. So I will now introduce the report. So after two successive Household Support Fund schemes, I'm pleased to present the proposals for Household Support Fund 3. The scheme is available from October until the end of March 2023 and enables this council to distribute a total of 2.5 million to North Northamptonshire's vulnerable residents. It will provide support to many households that are finding the increase in the cost of living hard to manage, particularly over the coming winter period. The report sets out the focus of HSF3, which is in 3 parts and in line with the Department and Work for Pensions guidance. 1. Children receiving free school meals who may not have lunchtime food available during the school holidays will receive a food voucher. We hope to award funds for the October half-term should the relevant recommendations in this report be approved here today by the Executive. 2. Households who have a working member of the family but are not eligible for the recent cost of living benefits will also be targeted in this. And 3, households in North Northamptonshire who are not able to manage to provide food and fuel over the winter period, when we can help them with either practical products, supermarket vouchers or direct support. This category will be open to all households and will be managed on a case-by-case basis. I would like now just to see if members have any comments on this report. Councillor Harrison.
As always, I'm really supportive of the HSF funds that have been successively given to us by government to distribute locally. The first 2 rounds were incredibly successful. I think we have checks and balances in place to ensure that there isn't fraud, lots of cross-referencing so that the same people aren't coming back and claiming several lots, for example. And the evidence so far is that we're getting it to the right people and it's having the effect that we wish it to have. And I have absolutely no doubt that this 3rd round will do exactly that. And I'm pleased that the guidance has been to target this, even more specifically, because there's been lots of different grants put out there to help different families in different ways. And I'm pleased that this one has identified that there are groups of people who are struggling, who haven't yet been given any help at all. And this particular round will help those people. So, I absolutely support this paper, and I think we're doing a good job of getting it to the right people. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Harrison. And there is some very established protocols now distributing these funds as this is the 3rd round of it. So I'm confident within that we should not have large amounts of any fraud. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I fully support this paper as well, and it's good to see that the £15 family payments to the children is going to be continued during October half-term, as we have done in the previous holidays. And of course, this can only be done because of the grant from central government. So I thank them for doing that. I also thank you for highlighting the point that it's open to all households, the information, because there are a lot of new households out there that find themselves perhaps for the first time in their life struggling and not sure where to turn to. So I thank you for opening that up to all households in getting information and support where needed. So I fully support this.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other comments, members? No, thank you very much. So I've moved the report myself. Can I look for someone to second that report, please? Councillor Pentland, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 71 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 7, which is the parking and bus lane enforcement service options. I would like to invite William Cocoon, which I don't think he's actually here at the moment, to speak, but so we can't do that. And Councillor Buckingham, you've kindly withdrawn your comments on this, so I'd like to go to Councillor Lorman to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Parking and other traffic enforcement is currently delivered in North Northants via the Kettering area by NSL on contract to West Northants, who host the service. Even so, the level of contravention of regulations and the issues around school parking continue to rise, becoming almost anarchic at times in some places, and I suspect Councillor Kahu may have been about to talk about that had he been here. This contract is due to end in March 2024. However, we've been able to negotiate an earlier end, March 2023, in the north. This reflects the fact that they derive most of their income, NSL, in and thus direct most of their resources to the west. We have therefore to arrange our own enforcement, including the back office services needed in a complex area to process any penalty charges and appeals. This requires a budget, recruitment and procurement. Imperial Civil Enforcement Solutions already provide this service for West Northants. The report discusses two main options and recommends that we proceed with option 2 to run the enforcement service, i.e. the civil enforcement officers, in-house, aligning it with the Kettering wardens, and the back office functions, which require specialist skills and knowledge to ensure successful managing of penalties, out to external contract, at least initially, to ensure processing is in place on time and to provide resilience. Having in-house CEOs enables us to direct the resources to where they are needed. There will be some initial start-up costs as staff are recruited and trained, but it's expected that the service will be cost neutral at least. Option 2 is the lower cost one. Even if they do not issue a lot of PCNs, they will have enhanced the area if they improve traffic flows and free up pavements for proper users, enhancing safety. Should the service make a surplus, that will be directed to lawful highway improvements as detailed in the report. So to enable us to further enhance our management of the highway network, I commend this report and option 2 to the Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Members, do you have any comments on any of this? Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a really positive paper, I think. Taking control of the enforcement in our area is always something that has this gone off? No, that can only be positive, really. I'll take it back to the former, when we were in the county council days. I know in the town where I live, I think we used to get 2 minutes of enforcement per month. I mean, that's literally driving from one side of the town to the other without stopping. So being able to target areas that we have problems in and being in control of this ourselves, it can only be a positive move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Okay, so Councillor Lorman, I'm sure you're moving the report. Can I look for someone to second the report, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So the report has been moved and seconded. Recommendations are set out on page 110 to 111 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please, I'm going to show hands in favour, please. Thank you. So we move on to item 8, the award of a contract for highways professional services to WSP UK Limited. So I'd like to invite Councillor Graham Lorman to introduce the report, please.
Thank you again, Chairman. On September the 12th of this year, the new highways contract with Kia started. The previous contract was with Kia WSP, with WSP being their design partner, but not being part of the new contract. WSP was still undertaking significant and important work for NNC at the time, and it could cause us to bear additional costs, reworking and delays as any new contractor familiarises themselves with the projects that will work not to be progressed to a point where it could be handed over to Kia, a new designer, or completed as appropriate. These works include responding to planning applications, managing our strategic transport model, capital projects and the LC WIPs. Isham bypass is separate. The Executive is asked to recognise these benefits and approve the award of a contract to deliver such activities. We can do this through the CCS framework, Various others are discussed in the report. This is within the current budget envelope. No new work will be commissioned through this, and officers will seek to achieve handover at the earliest practical time. The report covers various council plans this meets and risks of not adopting the report, so I commend the recommendation to the Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Do we have any comments from members? Councillor Harrison? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. This seems eminently sensible to me. We have some very important programmes that are being designed and project managed and developed at this point in time. To lose continuity on that is almost certainly lose time. Time's very expensive. So this makes absolute sense to me and I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Likewise, I'm supportive of this. As Councillor Lorman mentioned, there'd been a lot of work going on with the cycling and walking infrastructure plans. There'd been lots of input from the community, and it's really important that we're able to drive forward with those and not have any delays on that.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pentland, Councillor Harrison has basically said it. It makes absolute business sense and continuity. I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brackenbury.
Well, thank you, Chair. And like colleagues, I very much welcome this paper. I welcome the continuity it provides, and I also welcome Councillor Lorman's reference to the liaison between planning applications and highways, which is always of considerable importance when any new development is being proposed. So I think the paper is very eminently sensible, as has been pointed out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Okay, so Councillor Lorman's obviously moved the report. Can I look for a seconder, please?
Councillor Colquhoun's turned up. I don't know whether you want to hear him or not. But it's...
I think we've moved on now, and we're just going to the vote. Sorry. Councillor Lorman has moved the report. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Brackenbury. And have a show of, the recommendations are set out on page 124 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to item 9, Safer Streets Fund Round 4, 2022-2023. So I'd like to invite Councillor Matthew Binley to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to implement elements of the Safer Street projects for William Knibb and All Saints areas of Kettering and Queensway and Wellingborough. These are outlined in Appendix A in your packs. The Safer Streets Fund is designed to support local communities with funding of various measures to tackle crime in neighbourhoods that are disproportionately and persistently affected by crime and antisocial behaviour. Both of the project areas have been previously identified as suffering from disproportionate levels of crime and antisocial behaviour based on information from Northants police analysts and crime prevention officers. William Knibbs and All Saints have suffered due to the structure, layout and physical nature of the buildings, which unfortunately allow offenders to move around the area undetected. Therefore, restricting access through the alley gating and increased CCTV coverage will assist in eliminating this aspect. The area has also been identified as having issues with the supply of heroin and crack cocaine. Funding has been awarded directly to NNC for the amount of £261,000 for William Knibb and All Saints through a drawdown process. The funding will facilitate various home security and crime-reducing measures, including access control, i.e. the alley gating, and extending that CCTV coverage. Queensway has seen higher levels of violent and knife crime, which included the tragic murder of Dylan Holliday last year. There are also a number of young people involved in a gang culture. Queensway has been plagued with motorcycle nuisance across the estate, hence the element in the project which the off-road motorcycle track that already sits within the estate will be developed to offer a free facility offering various activities to the young people within the estate and the surrounding area. Queensway is also a left-behind area, as identified by the government's white paper on levelling up. The funding for the project in Queensway is led by the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's Office, with NNC being a key delivery partner for the project. The total funding for this project is £689,000. This funding will support a wide range of resources for which NNC are responsible for delivering the CCTV, the outdoor gym and the off-road bike track, all of which totals £285,000. This will be drawn down via the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's Office. The intended outcomes for these projects are increased detection of crime, a reduction in crime and antisocial behaviour, a reduction in knife-related incidents and crime, and the residents feeling safer as a result of the improvements, and increased youth engagement due to the activities provided. Funding for both of these projects has been awarded by the Home Office. Delivery of the projects will range from now until September 2023, with the completion deadlines set out in Appendix B in your packs for the various elements of both projects. Northamptonshire will also benefit from the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's Office project for tackling violence against women, focused in Kettering's nighttime economy, but there is no requirement on NNC to manage any element of the project. These funding bids have come about through working in partnership, and I would like to pay special thanks to the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's Office with supporting the William Knibb and All Saints bid and taking the lead on the Queensway bid. Therefore, Chair, I would like to move the recommendations made out in section 3.1A to B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. And look, it's absolutely crucial that the residents of Northamptonshire feel safe about going around in their daily business and whatever it is they want to do. And it's an absolute accolade to the Office of the Police and Fire Crimes Commissioner that they've managed to get this funding in place, and it goes to show the power of partnership working. And my sincere thanks to Stephen Mould and his team for getting to this position. Members, have we got any comments? Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support this because I think it's a really good way of approaching this by looking at what a particular area needs in terms of tackling the issues and putting that into an action plan. And I really hope that the outcomes are as we hope with this.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I particularly want to pick up a couple of sections of this. First of all, the alligating. This has been very successful in a couple of areas of Wellingborough, not only in reducing the antisocial behaviour, but also in reducing fly tipping, because people just then could not get access to the gunnies and ginnels that they were previously dumping stuff on, and only residents could. That's been very successful, as I say, in a couple of areas. And the other one I'm particularly pleased about is the refurbishment of the bike track. This was something that was put in place many years ago by the former borough, but fell into disuse and wasn't properly utilised. And I hope that this is an opportunity, because in the particular area of Queensway, the antisocial bike riding is rife, and giving users somewhere formal to use is a definite plus. And I think we're also working with the prison in this one, and they I don't think they're mentioned, but they are very interested in helping, so that's another useful outlet. So welcome to see that all the partners doing this, and look forward to an excellent facility being refurbished.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. This policy is absolutely vital for our area and has much wider potential than simply reducing crime. One of the wider determinants of health in terms of reducing health inequalities is having safer streets and reducing crime. It has a direct impact on people's health and well-being when their streets are not safe and they don't feel able to go out, and children are subjected to poor influences and so on. So I believe that these measures will not just reduce crime, they'll have a massive impact on the health and well-being of those communities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Okay, Councillor Binley has moved the report. Can I look for someone to second that report, please? Councillor Howes. Thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 132 of the agenda pack. So they've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Fantastic, thank you very much. So we now move on to item 10, Kettering Station Quartermaster Plan. So I'd like to invite Councillor David Brackenbury to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, well, it gives me pleasure to introduce this report and as another part of the regeneration of Kettering. In 2019, an application was successful to secure funding to prepare a master plan for the reimagining of the Kettering station area. Now, of course, everybody around this table is probably fairly familiar with Kettering station and also with the road access into Kettering under the bridges on Northampton Road particularly, and into Kettering that way. The Slade Brook runs alongside the railway, and of course with the necessary dip to get under the railway line, of course there have been some flooding issues where the access is so constrained. Also, the access to Kettering railway station is from Kettering town is rather cluttered, and the vehicles disappear off in all directions. It's not a very attractive gateway to Kettering. There is been a lengthy piece of work, and in conjunction with how Kettering seems to operate, we'll be inviting almost a game of Tetris to indicate how a project of redeveloping the whole area can be imagined. And as you will see from the papers, there are 5 phases that are proposed that would involve sequential moving of car parking from one place to another, redeveloping the former car parking sites, and then moving on to the next phase. And in the end, the whole approach to Kettering will be much tidied up and will in fact make a much more attractive gateway into the town. And of course, it is also pointed out in the report that the travel patterns have changed considerably since the COVID pandemic. Previous to the pandemic, Kettering was a very heavily used commuter station and very, very busy from about 7 in the morning till 10 in the morning and then quiet. Now, I think in conjunction with everybody in this room, we all know that work patterns have changed considerably. So there is less 9 to 5 commuting than there used to be, but there has also been a concomitant increase in leisure travel. So although commuter numbers in Kettering and on the East Coast or East Midlands Railway have declined, numbers for leisure activities have in fact increased. So it is important to use that increased leisure activity to make the entrance to Kettering more attractive. There are, as you can see, 5 phases which are set out in which car parks are moved. The Slade Brook is also realigned, which will have a considerable knock-on effect on flood mitigation and flood protection, which of course, sadly, Kettering is sometimes prone to. We are having a good deal of stakeholder and landowner engagement. One matter which has been pointed out to me is that the Kettering Sports Club own a considerable amount of land. If you look at the map on page 153, you will notice the land that is private in purple is mostly owned by the Kettering Sports Club, and naturally their interests need to be maintained. What we do not want to see is any redevelopment that affects adversely the sports club and the excellent facilities that it provides. The funding for carrying out this ambitious scheme is currently identified with something of a considerable deficit. I think there's about an £11 million deficit, but we do need to consider moving forward with this master plan, seeking to identify funding that we are able to do, and also as the environment changes, there may well be an improved viability possibilities as things go on. This is obviously going to be a project that is going to take till at least 2029 to bring into activity. So it's an ambitious project, it's an interesting project. I'd like to very much commend the patient work that the Executive Advisory Panel carried out when we went through this proposed master plan pretty much line by line. And I think that reflects the importance of the EAPs in setting and advising on policy. And I think that's a pretty good textbook example. And so, Chair, the recommendations are at 3.1, and I'm very pleased to commend the paper to Executive.
Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much for your comprehensive overview and introduction of that report. So, members, have we got any comments to make? Councillor Pendleton.
Thank you, Chair. As the report sets out, the Climate Change, Environment and Growth Executive Advisory Panel was also able to review this a few weeks ago. There was good discussion around the importance of biodiversity in this area and the protection and mitigation of impacts on that. And I know that officers were able to talk about that and the importance of biodiversity net gain in all of this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Leader. And it's actually falls in the ward that I represent as well. And so I think it's great. It's fantastic. It's much needed. That area is congested at the best of times. So anything we can do to alleviate that. I'm pleased you're looking at the parking issues as well, because my residents in the Headlands area will tell you that they're sick and tired of people parking on their streets and accessing the train station. So thank you for that. And also thank you for talking about the sporting facilities as well. You'll know that just over the bridge there are quite a lot that are linked to the leisure village, including many different types of sporting activities. So thank you for looking at that and ensuring none of those will be adversely affected from that. So thank you. I welcome it. I think it's a great addition to Kettering and a much needed addition to Kettering. And one final point, thank you also for looking at the access to the town centre. Because that is one of our major links to the town centre, and we shouldn't let that suffer anymore. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other comments from members? Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also welcome this report, and specifically, obviously, the 70 cycle parking spaces that will be included in the development. This will all form part of a bigger picture as we move forward with developing all of our leisure services and our cycleways and our walkways and the greenway as it moves forward in the coming years to encourage people to get out of their cars and start using sort of their legs and cycles to build on our health and well-being as well. So I encourage that we are providing that facility for people to park up with their bikes and things as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Howes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, this plan, not in this iteration, but it's been discussed for quite a few years in terms of developing the station quarter. So, as Councillor Edwards said, it's going to really sort out that particular area in terms of congestion. I was just warning. So hopefully there won't be too much noise for my dear wife and 2 children. Thank you, Chair.
We'll do our best, Councillor Howes, as we always do. Okay, so the report has been moved by Councillor Brackenbury, and the recommendations are set out on page 150 of the agenda pack. So they've been moved. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Lorman. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Unanimous, Chair. Absolutely. Thank you very much. So we're now moving on. Item 11, the Chief Principal Social Worker's Annual Report, and I would like to invite Councillor Harrison to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is to present, as it says in the title, the Chief Principal Social Worker's Annual Report. Sarah took up her post with us in August 2021, so the report covers the period from August 2021 to March 2022, detailing the work she's undertaken, her reflections and the priorities looking ahead. Normally, Sarah would be here to present this to you herself, but is unable to be here today. So David Watts is going to step into the breach and present the report for her. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison, and through you, Chair. Yes, apologies from Sarah. Sarah's the most senior social worker that we have working in the authority other than myself. And she acts as a conduit between our social work workforce and myself as the executive officer responsible for that. She would have hoped to have been here to present the report, and I know if she was here, there are huge elements of work that have been achieved over the 7 or 8 months that she's been in post with our social work workforce to improve practice and support our social work staff in their roles within the organisation. Just referring very quickly to the actual report document, so Appendix A, I think page 4 really sets out actually what our social work workforce is. You sometimes think that there's a huge amount of them, but there's actually not a huge amount of social workers. We have 46 qualified social workers, but a much higher proportion of non-professionally qualified social workers. They do very similar roles. They work under the guidance of social workers, and they are people that we do want to support to undertake their social work training and become our social workers of the future. You'll also see that there's some examples of different sorts of training courses that we are running. So we currently have 5 trainee-approved mental health professionals, which is a notoriously difficult post to recruit to nationally. So we have 5 current trainers in that area, 6 best interest assessors. And we also have 7 newly qualified social workers who, after their year of qualification, they have to be supervised in their first year to ensure that they are working to the expected standards. So that's called their assessed and supported year in employment. And there is a link between them successfully completing that and them then getting a permanent post within the organisation. The main areas of practice focus that Sarah has been looking at has been around our strengths-based practice and really trying to ensure one, understand how well that is embedded within our workforce, but how we can drive that forward as well. And there's been a review of a number of procedures, including our procedures around no recourse to public funds, our supervision policies and procedures, ordinary residents, people in positions of trust. So if we have people working in caring professions or working with vulnerable people where there are concerns about their practice or perhaps criminal behaviour, then we investigate those and undertake that piece of work. So we have to have very strong policies around that as well. And then the ethical framework for decision making, so balancing some of those judgments around what we, the decisions that we make when we are working with limited resources. And then I think the final part was about designing and implementing case file audit tool, which there wasn't one previously. So Sarah has reviewed a number of regional tools and designed and implemented one with our social work workforce. So every month there are now regular audits of social work case files, looking at the quality of assessments, making sure that people are taking into account the various things that we have to moving forward. And then on page 10 of the report, you'll see the priorities that will be the focus of Sarah and other social workers over the next year, particularly looking at things like social care reform, the implementation of liberty protection safeguards, but alongside that there will also be working relationships with the NHS, integrated care, etc. So I'm happy to take any feedback. Yourself, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, David, for presenting that. I think personally that Sarah's done a huge amount of work in the relatively short amount of time that she's been here, and I know that she's very ambitious for our social work staff and services looking into the future. So I welcome her report. I think it's a good report and a thorough report, and I think it's a very forward-looking report. So if she were here, I would thank her personally, but perhaps you could thank her for us, David. And if there's, as David just said, if there's anybody who has any comments or questions for us to take on, please do.
No, thank you very much, Councillor Harrison, and thank you, David, for that comprehensive overview of the report. And I just really want to echo what you've said. Councillor Harrison, Sarah has made massive inroads in a very short space of time here, and this is a comprehensive first-class report. And reviewing stuff around procedures just shows to me that we're aware as an authority and an organisation that we are checks and balances everywhere. We're trying to improve what we currently have as an offering, and I'm confident that this report sets out a long-term, sort of over the coming year, what we can do to help and support our residents as well, and through the social working schemes. But thank you very much, and again, please pass on my thanks to Sarah for this excellent report. Any other comments from members? Councillor Brackenbury.
Well, thank you, Chair. And like you, Mr. Chairman, I completely welcome this report. I think it provides a really fascinating overview of social care in North Northamptonshire, and it's clearly doubly to be welcomed because it doesn't shy away from some of the issues that face social care. And I know in my area, like yours, the difficulty of recruiting qualified trained staff and retaining them is of course always one of these massive problems. And I know it's a national issue, but the fact that you've taken it face on, and is very much is really great. I note the the questions about that come up from workers that say they said that they didn't necessarily want to recommend North Northants as an employer. Well, that's something we've got to work on. But then, further on, they said they actually welcome so much of what's going on. So, again, I think this is a morale matter. And in conjunction with other areas in North Northamptonshire, it's something that we, as a council, as an employer, need to continue the work to make ourselves an employer of choice. And I think that this excellent report can only serve to improve communications and improve the general feel and the general morale in social care. So absolutely terrific. Thank you very much for everybody who's been involved in it, and obviously to Sarah for putting the report together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Lorman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think I join everybody in recognising the work that social care workers do, and to thank them for their work, and we should pass that down to them. I'm particularly pleased to see that we are running apprenticeships, and there's a focus on retention and recruitment, which is so important. But I also thank the author for the honesty of the report and covering and bringing to us what areas we need to look at and concentrate on, and I'm sure we will. And if you don't know the problem, you can't solve them. So, and I think that there's some good work here, and we can look forward to providing a good service for our residents in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Okay, Councillor Harrison, I'll come back to you to just answer some of those comments and move the report.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Brackenbury and Councillor Lorman, you both raised the honesty, I think, of the report, and it's always absolutely vital that we know where we are in order that we can make sure that we get to where we want to be. You can't do without that without honestly appraising warts and all exactly where you are. And I would just like to comment particularly, Councillor Brackenbury, on the issue of social workers saying that they wouldn't recommend North Northamptonshire as a place to work. I would say that that's where we started, and you know, we would be looking at as a part of the legacy that we picked up. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that there are now no problems at all, but I do know that the dial has definitely moved, and I think in part that is because we're working so closely with our staff. So, you know, this is not a sort of a top-down approach where people sit in their offices and make decisions about things. We're taking our staff along with us, involving them in the decisions that are being made. And I think that's where you see the other comments further on that seem to almost contradict the idea that North Northamptonshire is not a good place to work. You know, what I would like to see is that continue to improve. And I would love one day for every single one of our employers to say that we're the best employer in the place. So, you know, we're always working to improve things, and I would suggest we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I assume you're moving the report. Excellent. Thank you very much. So the report's been moved. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. So it's been moved and seconded, and the recommendations are set out on page 170 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 12, transforming North Northamptonshire Council's adult social care provider services strategy and case for change. And I'd like to invite Councillor Maxwell to the floor. You have a maximum of 3 minutes, Councillor Maxwell, to address the meeting.
Agenda item 12, transforming NNC adult social care providing services, strategies and care for change. This report clearly defines a change in adult social care. The question, why should these people live in homes which should be up to date and managed by highly qualified staff who are recognised for their hard work and commitment? We as a council must encourage and retain and ensure that staff are recognised. Training is vital within this sector, not just having untrained staff. Pay must be rewarded and ensure that it's up to date and best practice. Equally, people living in homes must have the quality of life, which is what we all expect. Whilst these decide where they go next, funding is important, not PFI. This is a long-term problem. If you put training with the right qualifications, this would clearly help. We have to move to make sure that this investment is delivered. Poor quality accommodation is not acceptable. Why should residents be faced with living in them? Therefore, moving forward, we realise into private accommodation. Option 3 is the way forward for both staff and residents and a better quality of life. Maximising independence and providing generational change, the way forward. Investment is the way forward, creating a fit purpose which will bring about quality for both staff and residents in their independence. Moving forward, we'd like to live like this? And answer, no. Would you like to have more independence, living in with your own home with help? Yes. One thing must be achieved in making sure that staff are paid and rewarded and hard work. This is not just for now, but the future. how many people will we pay in the private sector at present? What are we going to do about homes that don't meet the needs of the residents while decisions are being made about their future? What are we going to do about the residents once they move? Will their families be involved? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I'd like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to speak. You have a maximum of 3 minutes, Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you. I welcome this report and the first focus for change. Done well, it could have real benefits for the council financially and outcomes, as long as it uses the Welsh definition of discharge to recover and the full complement of intermediary services needed to deliver positive outcomes. I'm a great advocate of the community hospital model outlined by John Bolt's research. However, an omission on the research was around community and personal networks, and this is where I see the ICS and the local area partnerships feeding into some of the proposals within the paper. However, cautionary adult social care covers such an enormous breadth of problems, from learning disabilities up through to Alzheimer's and dementia, and everything in between. So it's not a one-size-that-fits-all. However, welcome the first focus on this part, the case for change. The second part of that caution is about losing beds. So we know that you know, over the years we've lost beds, but you're right, the right beds in the right place for the right service. But it's how you get that. And it's not going to be easy. Talking about staff, we've looked at, you know, how staff need to feel valued, and the staff at both Pine Lodge and Beach Court didn't know anything that was coming forward until they saw the article in the newspaper. And I think you need to take staff alongside. You know, it's not good enough to find that your job might be at risk because of changes. And what happens, because some of the clients of Pine Lodge and Beach Court are have learning difficulties and will never have the capacity to live independently. So what happens, as Dorothy Maxwell said, what happens? You know, where will they go? I understand that you're changing the model, but what happens to them? And I think that's a question for them. And whilst this is an important cog and only the first
Sorry, Councillor Buckingham, that's your 3 minutes up now, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the whole.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Harrison to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm trying to decide in which order to do this, whether to go through my report or answer some of your questions first. I think I'd certainly like to clarify one thing about staff at Beach Close and Pine Lodge. They were told about this before it was in the local press. David Watts was consulting with them both on Monday and Tuesday of this week, so they were aware of that in advance of it being out in the press. And just to point out before I present this that I'm asking to go into consultation on this plan. I'm not asking to deliver this plan today. So this is all about consulting on the strategy and the case for change. And many of the things that you've raised with me today will absolutely be picked up in that consultation. So, for example, how the different client groups will be affected. And absolutely, we are part of the reasoning for this case for change is because there is no one size fits all, and we want to create a much better way of being able to encompass all of those different needs in a better, more flexible model. In terms of beds, we shouldn't lose any beds. This proposal should actually increase the number of beds that we directly have open to us, but also we will be using empty beds in the private sector, so we'll actually be increasing bed use overall should we go ahead and should everything come together in the plan. In terms of working within the integrated care system and with our local area partnerships, absolutely. You know, we must bring all our partners together. You may have seen the case for change around our hospital discharges, you know, keeping people well at home. Sorry, what's it called? The ICANN programme, sorry, it was just disappearing from my mind at that moment. That very much is encompassed by some of the changes we are hoping to make. So absolutely we will be working with our partners on all of that. Councillor Maxwell, I think most of your points will actually be picked up in the report as I present it. And if I think of anything as I go through, I will stop and answer your questions. So it gives me great pleasure to present this plan to transform our in-house adult social care services and to ask the executive to endorse the strategy and give its approval for the plan to be consulted on. And I say again, we're going in, you know, to go into consultation. It's really important to understand that that's where we are at this point in time. This plan will transform the services to our users, improve training, pay and career progression for our care workers, and provide up-to-date facilities that will allow us to provide the enhanced care that we need. This is not a cost-cutting exercise. It's an exercise in improved and better value services. I'd like to take a moment to explain the rationale behind the proposal, the proposed case for change. And we talked earlier about being really honest about where we are right now and not being able to work out where we need to go until we make an honest assessment of where we currently sit. And that's what I'm going to do first of all. So currently, we have care facilities that have suffered from poor investment and are not fit for purpose. Our care staff have been historically low paid and had minimal training and development. As a result, Beach Close, Pine Lodge and specialist care for younger adults have been rated by CQC as requires improvement. We're competing with a care market that's well established, has the capacity and is fully able to provide the type of long-term care that's delivered by some of these services. But on the other hand, we can struggle to access from the market high-quality assessment, re-ablement and enablement to support people to live their lives independently and be ambitious for their future. This is what we should be concentrating on to achieve the best value and outcomes. Understandably, given what I've just described, we struggle to recruit and retain staff. It's therefore imperative that we have a plan to address all of these problems, but it's also an opportunity to completely transform what we do. If you turn to page 198, which is page 8 of the Case for Change, you'll see described a phased approach to this transformation. Phase 1 does include the closure of Beach Close, the retraining and upskilling of staff and redeployment, and the possible running of one of the specialist care centres to focus on bed-based re-ablement. Phase 2, which would see the development of the Pine Lodge Case for Change, with the ambition to build a purpose-built centre to replace the current venue of between 16 to 20 beds, and a full review of the specialist support for younger adult service. Phase 3 would be a review of our non-regulated care provision with an options appraisal, and then phase 4 would be continuous improvement of all of these services. Other options were investigated and considered, and they're set out on page 184 and 185. And briefly, option 1 looked at the possibility of investing in the current buildings. This is not recommended due to the prohibitive cost, the fact that the residents would still have to move out for a year or more in every circumstance, and that even with that investment, our buildings still wouldn't provide the facilities that we need to provide the kinds of services that we want to provide. Option 2 was to do nothing. That's clearly not recommended for all the reasons I've already set out and the problems that we face. Option 3 is the strategy that I've just outlined to you and is the recommended course of action to be consulted on. So in short, this strategy will deliver a service that's fit for the future with better paid and trained staff and better outcomes for our users. I therefore propose that we accept the recommendations set out at 3.1, which I'm going to read out because they are detailed. So the recommendations are A, for the executive to consider the strategy in case for change and approve the proposal recommended option 3, to consult with regular users of North Northants Council CQC regulated provider services on the future proposed strategy and implications. To approve the request to engage with unions and staff affected on the strategy, case for change, and the 4 proposed phases of transformation. C, to delegate final decision-making following consultation to the Executive Member for Adults' Health and Wellbeing in consultation with Executive Director for Adults, Communities and Wellbeing to conclude the statutory consultation with people that use those services. D, to delegate the final decision to the Executive Member for Adults' Health and Wellbeing in consultation with the Director for Adults, Communities and Wellbeing as to whether to implement the strategy and phased proposals, and after that decision to enter into formal consultation with unions and affected staff. And E, to note that as part of phase 1 proposals that due diligence is being undertaken to consider and make recommendations to the executive on the business case for running a specialist care centre. It's anticipated that final proposals will be brought to the executive for consideration at its meeting on the 10th of November. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Harrison. And look, I absolutely welcome this report. It's fantastic. And look, what we begin to consult upon will improve the outcomes for our residents. It will offer an enhanced pay for our valid staff that are doing the work. And it just simply shows the difference between two authorities where massive underinvestment for years by Northamptonshire County Council within these facilities has left us where we are today. And all I can say is that I am pleased that we have a Director of Adult Social Services and yourself, Councillor Harrison, at the helm driving this visionary thing forward. It's absolutely unbelievable what can be achieved with these consultations and where we're heading with this in such a short space of time. And let's not forget, this is only 18 months of this authority being in place. And with, as I say, with a visionary DAS who thinks outside the box, it's refreshing to have one of those. And I am absolutely thrilled with this report. Thank you very much. Any other comments from members? Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, there's a tremendous amount of really good stuff in here, and I'm really pleased to see it. I just wanted to pick out a couple of things. In 2.3, it says enablement, reablement and developing independence will be at the heart of our approach, and it's really important that people are able to live an independent and fulfilled life and a joyous life and have the opportunity to do that right the way through. So I'm really pleased to see that focus. And the other thing on the other side, in the reasons C, it says the current facilities are in poor condition. And that's completely unacceptable, as the report requires. We should be giving people the environment that they really deserve. The fit-for-purpose premises are really vital for this. And you can see that in some of the newer private care homes that are being built that are really nice environments and with lots of facilities. And if we could make sure we provide the same thing, that's important, very important for people. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Brackenbury.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and I very much welcome this report as well, and I also fully endorse the comments that you've made, Chair, and the comments that Councillor Lorman's just made. It is a bold and strategic plan to completely reimagine the service that we're providing and offering in adults and health and well-being. And I just would like to congratulate the team and yourself, Councillor Harrison, for the excellent work in getting to this point of departure. I also very much welcome that, you know, this isn't something you're doing to people. This is something that we've come up with options and you're going to be consulting upon it. And I think that's also very much to be welcome. So I completely endorse the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. I'm just looking around. Councillor Edwards. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I fully support this report. And like the others have mentioned, there are so many positive things in it. But the one thing I want to mention is the commitment to staff. And, you know, that's highlighted that, you know, they do need training. They do need rewarding for the jobs that they do, because they go into these professions and you have to be a special kind of person to want to do this. And I absolutely think that we should reward and recognise the sterling work that they do. So absolutely support this report.
Thank you. Councillor Howells.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to say something on this report because obviously this beach close falls in my ward and Councillor Tebbett's ward. And on the face of it, you know, when you see, and it's already been sort of doing the rounds on social media that we're looking to close facilities, there's that initial shock. But actually, when you look at this report, as already sort of said, you know, in the reasons for the recommendations in 3.2, B and D really are the standout items, which is obviously that the facility isn't good either for our residents or our staff for the reasons that have been outlined. So the plan, in my mind, is the most important thing in terms of the fact we're going to end up in a much better place once we've done option 3, which is to consult. But you know, it is a bit of a blow for residents that are in my ward. But the implications of what we're going to achieve in the forthcoming future is going to be so much better for them and for staff, and obviously then attracting more staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howells. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for your supportive comments. It's much appreciated, and you know, paying compliments to me, I always think it's a bit unfair when it's David and his team who do all the hard work and do, you know, come up with these proposals and you know, really drive this forward. So you know, thank you for that. Just one comment, and you know, I absolutely understand that Beach Close being in your ward, and people always fear closures of facilities, and I absolutely understand that that's incredibly unsettling. I would just like to point out that whatever happens, unfortunately, those residents will have to move out, because even if we redevelop the property, in every scenario, the residents would have to move out for at least a year. So we haven't got any plan. There's no plan that would not be disruptive, unfortunately. So, you know, just wanted to point that out. But I do absolutely understand it's always unsettling when it looks like we're, you know, closing something, and sometimes that looks like that's all there is to it. But it's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. And I assume you want to move this report? Yes, I do. Okay, thank you. And can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Edwards, thank you very much. So the report has been moved and seconded. The recommendations are on page 182 and 183 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Lovely, thank you very much. So we now move on to item 13, Capital Programme Update 22-23. I'd like to invite Councillor Lloyd Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are just two items for the capital programme this month. Earl's Bottom Library Improvement, which is an extension for a storeroom, which is £51,000. And then Safer Streets, which was reported in item 9, and that is a capital programme increase of £312,000 this year and £234,000 next year, and that will be funded from the Home Office Safer Streets Fund in partnership with the Office of Northamptonshire Police Fire and Crime Commissioner. I'm happy to move the recommendation of paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bunday. Any comments from members? Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Earls Barton Library improvements, obviously this is Section 106 monies, so we're putting it to good use really, and with it being a community library. It's fantastic that they're taking this library forward and enhancing the offering that's there, and I'd just like to thank all of the volunteers actually who run all of our community libraries out there. They're doing an absolute sterling job, and we're very supportive of them, and it's great to see even more opening. We've got another one has just opened in Urchester, so I'm really delighted that we're moving forward and, as I say, enhancing the offering. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Okay. So, Councillor Bunday has moved the report. Can I look for someone to second that report, please? Councillor Howe. The recommendations are set out on page 218 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 14, which is the budget forecast 2022-2023 as of period 5. Councillor Bunday, over to you to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to set out the forecast outturn position for 22-23 for the Council for the General Fund and Housing Revenue account based on the income and expenditure as at the end of August 2022, which is period 5, and reflects the views of the budget managers within these directorates. Before I speak about period 5, may I draw members' attention to paragraph 2.3, which reflects the status of the legacy authorities' audited accounts. This reflects 6 sets of accounts being audited and a 7th presented for audit since March 31st last year. I hope you will agree that this is a very impressive effort by our finance team and should be commended. The responsibility for closing the and auditing the account for the legacy council authority is being led by the West, and there's still a few small items to conclude. The overall outturn forecast for the General Fund for 22-23 as at period 5 is a forecast overspend of some £3.7 million against an approved budget just over £300 million. This is outlined in paragraph 4.1 of the report, and then in more detail by directorate at paragraph 4.3. Despite the economic pressures, council tax collection remains strong, reflecting an increase from the same period last year. And although circumstances in business rates collections is different, these two remain in a healthy position. £500,000 of the contingency has been used to partially offset the ongoing utility pressures, and it is assumed that the contingency will be fully used during the current year to address inflation and additional costs of pay awards. The largest overspend at period 5 remains that of the Children's Trust, which reflects a £3.028 million to this authority. Other variances are listed in paragraph 4.3 and referenced at paragraphs in section 5. Place and economy has several pressures, the largest being cost of utilities, fleet vehicles, bus lane enforcement and waste management. There are also pressures of over £1 million for street lighting and nearly £200,000 for traffic signals due to energy increases. Although on the whole, departments are working hard during difficult times to keep within budget, many of the services we provide are not only by statute, but are demand-led. This does create risks that are beyond our control. As we embark on this time of year of cold, dark nights, there will be pressures from all directions. The war in Ukraine appears to be entering a different phase. COVID has never quite gone away and now appears to be coming back with a vengeance. The Southern Hemisphere has had one of the worst flu epidemics, and we tend to follow. And then there is the ever-present threat of inflation. As a council, although a great deal has been achieved, there is still much to do. Aggregation and disaggregation of our legacy councils will be with us for quite some time to come, as will restructuring and transformation. Until more is achieved, we are still exposed to the management of other organisations and partners, and must be alive to the risks of their pressures becoming ours. The Council overall outturn forecast for the housing revenue account as at period 5 is a forecast underspend of £126,000, which reflects a movement from £335,000 from period 4 and is against an approved budget of some £36.27 million. The forecast rental position in Corby as at period 5 is £51,000 less than the budget, and this is due to right to buy sales being 12 higher than the budgeted last year. The assumption for right to buy for this year remains unchanged, and void rates are remains almost unchanged at 0.9%. The savings within repairs and maintenance, general management and special services amounts to £233,000, which primarily reflects a £300,000 reduction in the cost of the insurance premium due to increased amount of excess. These savings are partially offset by increase in utility costs and other minor pressures. In Kettering, the level of right to buy was lower by 8 than forecast, amounting to a rental gain of £36,000. However, void rates were higher, reflecting a loss of income of £41,000. Salary costs are £171,000 higher than budget to the use of agency staff, and stock costs are £180,000 higher due to inflationary price increases. This pressure is offset by repairs and maintenance costs being £92,000 lower than budget, and subcontractor costs being £140,000 lower than budget due to services being brought back in-house. It is fair to say that we are experiencing some challenging times, with many pressures being due to issues beyond the control of this council, many of which could not be foreseen at the start of this financial year. Pressures that are not only of a national scale, but are global. May I refer members to paragraph 4.7 onwards, which sets out the national and indeed international context. I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bunday. So I'd like to ask members if you've got any comments to make. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I think we're all really well aware of all of the pressures that everybody's facing, not just residents, but in this council as well. I mean, particularly in my directorate, with all of the wonderful leisure facilities that we have across our district. We've just got Corby swimming pool just outside of these premises, and you can just imagine the utility costs for that, how they're going. And I think we need to be very mindful of that moving forward. I mean, I know that we're doing our level best to try and accommodate all of these costs, but there are going to be some serious pressures and some very difficult decisions, I'm sure, in the future. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Okay, so the report has been moved by Councillor Bunday. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So the report sets out the recommendations on page 224 and 225 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Could I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on. Urgent items of business. I can confirm that I have received no requests to consider any urgent items of business at this meeting. Exclusion of the press and public. I confirm that there are 2 exempt items for consideration at this meeting. I therefore propose to exclude the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business in accordance with Section 100A of the Local Government Act of 1972, because exempt information may be disclosed. And that's item 15, Fletton Fields in Oundle, and item 16, legal service provision. Please can I have a mover, please, for that, and a seconder. So it's been moved by Councillor Howe and seconded by Councillor Howes. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. At this point, before we close the meeting to the press and public, I would like to thank members of the public who may be viewing this meeting online, and thank you for their attendance.